Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of SADHAKA. I'm here with friend and fellow yoga teacher Erica Mather, and this is the second of a 5-day video series where we're exploring the connection or the intersection between spiritual practice, yoga, and politics and social justice. And so today, Eric and I are going to be talking a little bit about the politics of the body. And I guess part of the inspiration behind this series is really to start to see political engagement and discussions around social justice as being perhaps something that we could start to think about as a component of our sadhana. So with that, hi, Erica.
Hi, Jacob.
This is such a pleasure.
This is exciting.
Yeah, it's super exciting. So Erica actually lives downstairs.
3 floors.
3 floors down. So one of the nice things about living in New York is you are always just, a few floors below or above someone super inspiring. So I'm really happy you're here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll direct ourselves into this just right away. But if you want to, check
how you're looking. If I want to check how I look, I can look down
good.
there every now and then. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we're all right.
All right.
You look great.
Thank you. So do you.
Thank you.
All right. So we had sort of talking about the politics of body, and so I guess the question to kind of start would be, what kind of wisdom do you think we as yoga teachers have to offer the conversation around the kind of politics of the body as it's emerging, right now in our current situation?
I think one of my favorite quotes is the Audre Lorde quote where she says that self-care is not like an indulgent thing. It's actually an act of revolution. And in our culture, we don't have a lot of practices of self-care. It's like you could go to the gym or you could, get a massage. But to have a daily practice, I mean, going to the gym, I feel is a lot of times more aspirational about like I would like to be healthy or fit or look a particular way. And I think the objectives of yoga are different. And so having a practice of taking care of yourself is revolutionary in a way. And I think that particular Audre Lorde quote should be like a rallying cry in a lot of ways for not just yoga teachers, but for everybody, specifically in this moment when our healthcare system is in transition, I guess maybe is the way to put it. Dissolution, a revision, I'm not really sure. But, I don't know what's coming, but I do know for sure that we're going to be on our own.
Yeah.
And if you're on your own, then it might behoove you to have some idea of what it means to actually take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Not just like I can put food on the table and I can, pay for my internet and my phone bill, but really to take care of the body. And I feel like as yoga teachers, we're rather uniquely positioned in order to help our people gain some skills and some tools in that regard.
Yeah. So how do you think, just to get real about, all the kind of components at play, like in terms of the politics around women's bodies, especially the politics around, bodies of color, like how is yoga practice serving as a counter kind of voice to what we might say is a sort of narrow-minded and perhaps oppressive kind of approach to embodiment?
Yeah. I'm glad you asked me this because this is sort of like my personal thing is like body empowerment and body positivity. I feel like, particularly when yoga is framed as fitness, that it's important to have this as a counterbalance.
Yeah.
So the thing about the politics of the body as they're emerging right now is that they make bodies unsafe spaces, right? So if you have a body that is not approved, it's not thin enough, it's not white enough, it's not cisgendered enough, it's not heteronormative enough, that now you are occupying an unsafe body. And what I think that yoga teachers have, if they choose to use it, is a modality to help people feel safe in their bodies. And even if the body is under attack, even if there's some sort of onslaught. And it's interesting we're talking about this because just this past weekend I led a module on authenticity and truth. And one of the things that we were working on one day was how do you create a safe space in your own practice? And I thought for a moment it was really strange and weird that I was having this conversation with a group of white people. Because if you're a white heteronormative person, you have the safest body in the world at the moment, particularly if you're a man. But those were conversations that I felt would be much more relevant and pertinent for people who have bodies that are less safe to come home to. But that isn't to say that people who are heteronormative and white and mainstream don't also feel unsafe in their own bodies.
Yeah.
So I feel like the message of body empowerment, of body confidence, of coming home to your body is one that's relevant for human beings.
Everybody, yeah.
Human beings.
Well, what really strikes me about you saying that is that, not only obviously do we have this, this reality of bodies, underprivileged bodies being made to feel less than safe, but also, the kind of source of that reactivity must come from some kind of place of feeling unsafe. I mean, these people who are being mobilized so much by fear right now that they would see bodies outside them as being a threat must in some way feel profoundly unsafe in their embodiment. Would you agree with that?
On a spiritual level, yes. I have to say, what motivates people? I mean, this gets down to the idea is are people innately good or are people innately bad, or are they a little bit of both? And I think that if you're a spiritual practitioner of the yoga lineage, then you'd probably say that you're probably going to lean towards people who are either innately good and they just don't know it, or they are many, many things, and part of the path of spiritual evolution is making peace and coming to terms with all the parts of yourself, even the part of yourself that has homicidal urges.
Yeah.
So, which we know a lot about in New York City, and part of the reason we're so great and we're so nice is because we've dealt with them. The path, I think, to being a good person is actually through the darkness in a lot of ways. So, so I think, however, the real answer to this is one about capitalism, which, interestingly enough, we're kind of in this funny moment of defining how capitalist societies will work.
Yeah.
But the transition from feudalism to capitalism marked the beginnings of a very decisive campaign of fear and violence.
Yeah.
And the fear and violence, I think the hatred that gave root to every other hatred, quite frankly, was the hatred of women. And that every other hatred stands on the shoulders of hatred of women. And that they sort of learned how to do it by watching how men and women were divided in the transition from feudalism to capitalism, as we watched how reproductive rights were the rights to control your own productivity were slowly removed from women, how non-procreative sexual acts were demonized, and that all happened at the transition from feudalism to capitalism. So when you say when we're talking about people who are hateful, what is their own sense of an absence of embodiment? I can't really say because I don't know.
Yeah, right.
But I would have to think that those feelings of fear, feelings of hatred, usually underneath it is fear. And so what is that fear? And the fear, I guess, is some deep-rooted, very long-standing education in how other people are bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or how
or
how other people's empowerment is somehow a threat to your own, to your own power that you've been privileged to have for however long.
Well, and I mean that sort of. I mean, there was a time there. If my understanding of human history is sort of spot on, and I can't really tell you what happened yesterday. So, and I think that most people, if they're really honest, they have very short memories. And any speculation about what happened...
Such terrible memory.
I know, any
Is
speculation...
that just me?
Oh, no, God.
I had early onset
No, I have Swiss cheese for brains. I'm serious. The only reason I'm a good yoga teacher is because I can remember how to move my body. I'm like, I can put that left foot forward. I got that. No, but there used to be, society was collective. And then there was a division. And so it became, instead of us, it became you versus me.
Yeah.
And I think it's really the you versus me versus, well, if we're going to survive the winter, you know, not to, like, reference Game of Thrones, but if we're going to survive the winter, it's a great show. The books are even better. I read all of the books, and I'm watching a TV show.
Even the fourth one? I heard the fourth one was kind of like,
the fourth book. Okay, the fourth book was not my favorite. That's true, but as on the whole, the books are better, I'd say. But, I mean,
a bibliomaniac always says that. Someone who loves books.
A bibliomaniac? Yeah. I'm going to put that in my profile. I'm a bibliomaniac.
Yoga teacher, bibliomaniac.
Yeah, I think that's Kylie Holiday, actually, probably.
Yeah, definitely.
Bibliomaniac. But anyway, back to the topic. If you are going to, you know, group together to survive the winter, you're going to have to work together. And we just have been so fortunate in so many ways that we haven't had to work together. We've been able to survive without working together that much.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
I got a little derailed by enthusiasm.
Yeah, Game of Thrones always derails me. I sometimes look online just to find out when it's coming back on air, and then I forget, and then I have to look again, and this is sort of
this is like an ongoing thing. That's your evidence of Swiss cheese brain. You can't remember when it's coming back on the air.
Speaking of politics of bodies, I mean, don't get me started on Game of Thrones. I don't really have anything to say about that, but I'm sure there's something to say.
Actually, there is something interesting to say, which is if you read the books, I think it's a very, very interesting sort of social history in fiction revival of how did torture become okay.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it was so fascinating to watch this. Like, well, we're just going to get them to say what we need them to say, and if we need to get them to say what we need them to say, we're going to have to waterboard them.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, interestingly enough, I mean, should it come as any surprise that anybody will say anything if you're torturing them?
Anything. Yeah.
I mean, unless you've undergone training.
Yeah.
Like, that's why the military has training.
Yeah.
To help you figure out how to handle that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that you mentioned that because I was just talking to Jimmy the other day about 24 because from what I understand, I remember there being a big hoopla about this when 24 originally came out during the Bush years, which was that it was the first mainstream television show to show torture done by the good guys, like to show torture as something that was excusable under certain moral conditions. And before that, the torture was always something that the bad guys did. It was always something that was on the wrong side of morality did. And 24 sort of ushered in this sort of like moment of reconsidering torture as actually, you know, morally excusable. Or, you know, besides being just effective, as, you know, someone who might say it's morally excusable might still say it's effective. Anyway. Okay.
It's one of the great things I learned from another TV show, which you should watch. It's called Lie to Me, which is kind of amazing. Where the main character is always like, when someone's about to like hit someone or torture someone, he's like, "You really think you're going to get reliable information that way?"
Yeah.
He always like framed it like, if you want reliable information, you shouldn't hit people. That's just not the way to get them to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
It really isn't.
You need to befriend them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, create like a rapport with a person.
He's a great con man. Lie to Me. If you want to watch Con Artist at work, it's kind of incredible.
Lie to Me. So I wanted to, you know, we have a limited time, and I want to get you out. Oh, 8 minutes, we got to get you out of here. So I wanted to talk a little bit. I just wanted to sort of throw in this kind of idea of imagined bodies or like culturally written bodies, which is something that I know like a lot of feminists have done work on in like feminist theory, where the idea is that, and we've sort of alluded to this in the things that we've talked about, but there's a way in which the culture is writing, you know, the culture has written in a certain kind of way through like body image representations, you know, both male and female, but, you know, obviously women have been at the brunt of this, probably historically more so, and people of color. But this idea that our internal representation or the kind of form or shape that we understand about our embodiment or what we focus on is always in some sense contingent upon the kind of cultural formation process that we're involved in. And so I was thinking about this in relation to us as yoga teachers and how the yoga space is really a space for reimagining our relationship with the body. And so going back to that self-care, it's really a place, or like a kind of experimental zone where we can confront the kind of the formative ideas about our bodies that have been enculturated within us, and then perhaps in that process of moving and breathing and feeling, there is this kind of overturning and perhaps replacing with something more expansive or something more liberating.
Absolutely. I mean, that's really been my experience. I came to yoga. I was an athlete. I had an eating disorder. I was sick also too. I mean, really what brought me to yoga was migraine headaches. But in that space of yoga was the first time that I was invited to have an understanding of my body that was dependent not on what it looked like or what it could do, but just on what it felt like. Yeah. And so within that invitation, then I was able to recreate a different relationship that was actually one of pleasure instead of one of pain. Because you look in the mirror and you're like, wow, I'm really ugly or whatever. Not that those things are true, also because I have body dysmorphia disorder. So what I see is not really... Yeah. It's not aligned, but we could go on and on about is ever what you see actually really aligned. Exactly. So there's that sort of other like kind of weird metaphysical layering to this actual, psychiatric condition. But so it was the first time that I was able to feel, and then there was a whole new layer of weirdness actually that emerged, because sometimes what you feel is so different from then when you look, you're like, wow, that's so weird. That's not what it feels like at all. It looks so different. And I see sometimes yoga teachers, when they have photos taken of themselves for the first time, that it can be really affronting because they think that the pose looks different based on how it feels. And actually, I think that's okay to let the guidance of it feeling good take you in the direction to go. Yeah. But this idea that, yes, I think we have a very unique opportunity as yoga teachers if we teach in a particular way, right? There are things that you must do, I think, in order to teach body positivity within the classroom. Yeah. And if you make that choice to teach that way, then you give your people this gift of reimagining themselves in their own design, where they can say, I am, and really claim that I am beautiful, I am strong, I am capable, whatever it may be, and have it not be some like weird dogmatic thing that they're just repeating because someone else told them to, but because they really feel it and then they can claim it and own it, and then that redesigns their conception of self from the inside out. Interestingly enough, I have a conference on body image confidence, and it's at Kripalu. We had it in November. We're having another one in August. It's August 23rd through 27th. And one of my keynote speakers is Matthew Sanford, who's a, I think he's a paraplegic, and so he teaches yoga from a wheelchair. And we were talking about the sort of the problem of body image in yoga, because image means that you take a mental formation and you install it, right? Instead of confidence, which means that you create it from the inside out and then you project it. And so we were talking about that, and it was really interesting talking to him, because he's like, this is so important because yoga people are so vain and they're just not willing to admit that they're vain. And I was like, that's very true, actually. But I think that for me, actually, that is part of the liberation process. Is if you think of vanity as a form of a shadow entity that you need to embrace and work through, that then just embracing, hey, I'm vain, and then moving through it is part of the evolutionary process of yoga that we, I think, are uniquely positioned to help people with. Because I think that we can work well in the darkness, and the path to the light is really through the darkness.
Wow, what a great note to end on. Well, thank you so much, Erica. We're actually right before 2:45. So
awesome.
Perfect. So since we do have 2 minutes, why don't you just share where people can find you? You mentioned your workshop.
My workshop. Well, my workshop. I have so much going on, but my website is ericamather.com, and sometimes I'm not so great about updating my events. So Do you have that problem too?
Oh yeah. So
So
you're very good at distributing flyers in your class, though. You're very good at that. So go to her class.
go to my class at Pure. But if you're not at Pure, you can also find me on Facebook. I have a fan page, Erica Mather. I'm a writer. Did you know that? So, but I also have a blog called StuffILearnedAtYoga.com.
Oh my gosh, I've never read that.
Yeah,
I
you'll
have to
find
read
some of my
that.
body politics stuff up on there. And if this is interesting to you, actually StuffILearnedAtYoga.com is probably the best place to go find some of those writings. And then this conference at Kripalu, the Yoga and Body Confidence Conference. It's August 23rd through 27th, end of summer.
Amazing.
High
Amazing.
five.
High five.
Woohoo!
Thank you. Thank you so much, Erica.
Thank you all
It's been
for
such a
listening.
pleasure. All right, guys, have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk to you tomorrow for the next interview with, I believe, is going to be Carol Horton here to talk about.
Wow,
Do you know her?
Oh, yeah, Carol and I go way back.
Oh, awesome.
Old
Yeah,
days.
we're going to be talking to her tomorrow about social justice and all that
You
fun
want to be
stuff.
here for that. She's very smart.
Okay.
Very, very smart and very savvy.
Yeah, so check it out. All right, talk to you soon. Bye-bye now.
Bye. Is that hilarious, Jimmy?